On a chilly winter evening, a biting wind howled through the pines surrounding a small cabin nestled deep in the Rockies. Garrett, a solitary forest ranger on his week-long retreat, was halfway through a steaming cup of coffee and the last few chapters of his favorite novel. The crackling fireplace filled the room with warmth, and the faint scent of pine wood smoke added to the cozy ambience. The weather forecast had promised an overnight snowstorm, and the gusts rattling the window panes suggested the prediction was accurate. As Garrett stretched to ease the tension in his back, a sudden noise pulled him from his reverie. A faint, almost plaintive sound, like a cry, carried through the frosty air. Frowning, he set his book down and approached the window. Outside, the shadows of the forest merged into the darkness of the approaching night, but he noticed movement near the porch steps. Squinting, Garrett caught a glimpse of an animal, its fur illuminated momentarily by the flickering porch light. Curious and slightly apprehensive, he grabbed his thick jacket and gloves before stepping into the freezing night. The wind stung his face as he opened the door, and he was met with an unusual sight: a bobcat, crouched low but visibly shivering, staring at him with unblinking amber eyes. Its fur, a mix of tawny gold and gray with distinct dark markings, was matted in places, and the creature seemed to have been wandering for some time. For a moment, neither moved, the tension between man and wild animal palpable. Garrett had encountered cats during his ranger duties, but never this close and certainly not one behaving so oddly. Its gaze was intense, pleading almost, and as it shifted slightly, he noticed the creature's swollen midsection. Was it injured? Or, he hesitated, could it be pregnant? The bobcat let out a low growling sound, its paw tentatively reaching forward as if asking for entry. Garrett's instincts told him to be cautious, but another part of him, the part that respected the wild and its unspoken rules, urged him to act with kindness. Against better judgment, he opened the door wider and stepped back. To his astonishment, the bobcat didn't hesitate. It padded inside, its movements weary but deliberate, and immediately sought the warmth of the fire. The icy wind followed briefly before Garrett closed the door, sealing out the storm. He stood there, watching as the animal curled up on the rug, a sharp contrast to the room's rustic comfort. The firelight danced across its fur, highlighting the tension in its taut muscles as it lay still, except for the faint rise and fall of its chest. Garrett's thoughts raced. What would compel a wild creature to approach a human in such a vulnerable state? Was it hunger, desperation, or perhaps an instinct deeper and more primal? Deciding the creature must be hungry, he rummaged through his kitchen for anything suitable. He found a piece of cooked chicken he'd saved from dinner and cautiously set it down near the bobcat. The animal lifted its head, sniffing the air, but to his surprise, it ignored the offering and instead focused on the fire, as though seeking only warmth. Garrett sat on the far end of the couch, keeping a respectful distance while observing his uninvited guest. The bobcat occasionally glanced his way, its eyes glinting in the firelight. It seemed oddly calm for a wild animal, though Garrett could see the tension in its movements, a creature caught between instinctual fear and trust. As the hours passed, the storm outside intensified. Snow began piling up against the windows, muffling the world in an icy embrace. Garrett stoked the fire, ensuring the room stayed warm. The bobcat remained near the hearth, its breathing steady but shallow. It seemed to sense it was safe, and Garrett found himself oddly comforted by its presence. By morning, the cabin was buried under a thick blanket of snow. Garrett woke to a strange sound, a low, rhythmic rumbling. It took him a moment to realize it was the bobcat purring. The animal was lying on its side now, and as he approached, he noticed it looked even rounder than the night before. His suspicion from earlier resurfaced. The bobcat was pregnant. Unsure of what to do, Garrett decided to check in with his ranger contacts via his emergency radio. However, the storm had knocked out the signal. He was on his own, left to rely on his instincts and whatever knowledge he had. If the bobcat went into labor, he would need to make sure it was comfortable and safe. Throughout the day, Garrett kept busy. He cleared the snow from the cabin's entrance and ensured there was enough firewood to last through the storm. Meanwhile, the bobcat had claimed a corner of the living room, where it seemed to rest in preparation for what was to come. Garrett laid out an old blanket for her, and though she regarded him warily, she eventually settled on it. That evening, as the storm began to ease, the cabin was filled with a new sound, tiny, high-pitched cries. Garrett watched in awe as the bobcat gave birth to 3 small cubs. Their fur was damp, their eyes tightly shut, and their mewling voices filled the otherwise silent room. The mother worked diligently, cleaning each cub and nudging them close to her for warmth. Garrett felt an unexpected swell of emotion as he observed the scene. Here was a wild creature, vulnerable yet fierce, trusting him enough to share such an intimate moment. He kept his distance, not wanting to disturb the new family, but ensured the fire stayed lit and the room remained warm. Over the next few days, Garrett adjusted to his unusual housemates. The mother bobcat remained cautious, but allowed him to bring her food and water. She refused most of it at first, but as she regained her strength, she began to eat small portions. The cubs grew quickly, their tiny bodies becoming more robust with each passing day. Garrett made an effort to document the experience, snapping a few photos of the bobcat and her cubs from a respectful distance. Once the storm subsided, he reached out to his contacts. However, no one reported a missing or injured bobcat in the area. Wildlife experts advised him to release the family back into the wild when they were ready, but Garrett wasn't sure he could bring himself to part with them just yet. Weeks turned into months, and Garrett's cabin transformed. The once quiet space now echoed with the playful antics of the young bobcats. They tumbled over each other, exploring every nook and cranny of the cabin. The mother bobcat, whom Garrett had started calling Luna, became a steadfast companion. Though still wild at heart, she seemed to appreciate the safety and warmth of her temporary home. Garrett took great care to ensure that the cubs didn't lose their natural instincts. He built an outdoor enclosure where they could climb, dart, hunt, and learn the skills they would need to survive in the wild. Yet every evening, Luna and her cubs returned to the cabin, curling up by the fire as if it were their rightful place. As the seasons changed and the snow melted, Garrett knew the time was approaching when Luna and her cubs would need to return to the wilderness. He dreaded the thought but understood it was the best thing for them. On a crisp spring morning, he opened the enclosure, giving them the freedom to leave whenever they were ready. Luna was the first to step out, her movements deliberate and graceful. She turned back to look at Garrett, her amber eyes holding his gaze for a moment longer than expected. Then, with a flick of her tail, she led her cubs into the forest. Garrett watched until they disappeared among the trees, a bittersweet smile on his face. Though his cabin felt empty without them, the memory of their time together would forever warm his heart. The wilderness had given him an unexpected gift, one that reminded him of the delicate balance between man and nature, a bond forged on a cold winter night and cherished forever. Have you ever encountered a wild animal in need of help or shared a moment with nature that changed your perspective? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss more heartfelt stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.